sort of cursory kind of change for our country. How are we going to treat survivors of these kinds of horrendous acts? And this is a moment when all of the people in our country who have experienced, so many of them, it's all coming back to them, and they see this as a moment for them to come forward and tell us and share us the truth of their pain. And I don't see how we as decision makers can ignore that kind of pain that is going on throughout our country, and it is all part, I would say, of the Me Too movement.
Let me ask you this. You are a no vote before the allegations surfaced, right,
yes,
on Bret Kavanaugh for substantive and jurisprudential reasons. On the question of whether he did what he is alleged to have done, are you persuadable? Is the FBI report going to change your mind about how you feel about what you saw and heard yesterday?
I found Dr. Ford's testimony and her account so credible because there were indicators of credibility. For one thing, she has nothing to gain from coming forward like this. Her life has been upended. She talked about this attack long before Judge Kavanaugh was ever nominated. She took a lie detector test. There are indicators of credibility around her, and I also knew that up to today there was not going to be any kind of an independent FBI investigation. So I believe her. Yeah. And we need to go forward. You know, these survivors not only need to be believed, but they need to not only be heard, but believed. So I have all kinds of other substantive reasons for why I was against Judge Kavanaugh's nomination in terms of his lack of support for reproductive choice. Definitely not a friend of environmental protection laws. Very expensive views of protecting the president from criminal or civil investigations. And so there was a pattern to his decision making. And he also misstates the holding of a case. He misapplies cases. He misstates facts. And that's all part of his credibility. And of course, this newest set of reports, that also lends to his lack of credibility, in my opinion.
Let me ask you to respond to what he said today after basically I was surprised somewhat that the White House, everyone just said, well, okay, we'll go along with this. This is Kavanaugh. Throughout this process, I've been interviewed by the FBI. I've done a number of background calls directly with Senate. And yesterday, I answered questions under oath about every topic the senator and their counsel asked me. I've done everything they've requested and will continue to cooperate. What do you think of that?
I think the most telling thing is he was asked time and again yesterday that his hiding behind the president, who was not going to call for an FBI investigation, hiding behind the Republicans who were not going to call for an investigation, for him to say, I'm willing to cooperate, I will do whatever the committee says, knowing full well the committee was not going to request it. And he was asked time and again, how about you? You can break this impasse. Will you call for an FBI investigation? And he would not answer. See, that's very telling, because the people who came forward, the three women, they said, we want an FBI investigation.
Senator Mazie Hirono, thank you so much for taking some time.
Thank you.
With us.
Aloha.
All right. For more on these extraordinary developments, I'm joined by Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, who is here in New York. It's very nice to see you in person.
Good to see you, Chris.
What is your constituent response been like in the last, say, 24 hours?
Yeah, absolutely overwhelming. And obviously the main focus is on my constituents' belief that Dr. Ford is telling the truth, and that Bret Kavanaugh throughout his testimony seemed to have a very loose grasp of the truth, even with respect to some minor details about his high school days. But I got to tell you, I got just as much input about his tone and his tenor. There were lots of people who were calling our office, emailing our office about the idea that anyone, Republican or similar hearings, and the Anita Hill hearing, you had 20 plus witnesses that were called, spanning several days. Here, you had two witnesses, even though you had other eyewitnesses who could add a lot to the discussion. So it does feel like something is fundamentally breaking, and I almost appreciate the fact that the Republicans in the end took the mask off. Right? They stopped allowing their prosecutor to ask questions. They decided to turn it into a big political show, because you saw what their end game here was, not really getting to the truth, but doing whatever was necessary to try to jam him through.
Today, Chris Coons and Jeff Flake got together on this compromise. And, there's a lot of people, I think, who sort of harken back to those days, and they really want to see the Senate function like that. And then I was talking to a lot of people who were watching it, and they were on the outside, a lot of citizens, and these are very active citizens. They're like, how could these people be friends with each other? Like, how can you not hate these people? I'm just furious. I'm so furious. I'm screaming at the TV. Like, how psychologically and emotionally, how do you conduct yourself in that body with those twin impulses?
Yeah, so one of the first things I did when these allegations broke was I went to one of my friends who's one of the most conservative senators in the place just to sit down and hear him talk through how he was processing these allegations. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, and so I think it's important to put yourself in the shoes of folks whose prism is different than yours. And I think more of that happens in the Senate than you think. And I think we have an understanding about the fact that our worldviews are different, our constituencies are different, and frankly, the ecosystems we exist in are different. Sitting every day in the Republican caucus listening to Fox News is very different than what happens to us. And so I think that allows
you get the truth every night.
I get the truth from you, right? Exactly. But I think that there's a little bit more of that ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes in the Senate than folks might think, and it allows for moments like today to break through.
But at the same time, you have to balance that against the sense that there's this sort of procedural maximalism that just keeps getting worse. I mean, fresh in the mind of a lot of people are Merrick Garland. People really feel like Dr. Ford has been treated incredibly shabbily. Republicans feel, and I think in good faith feel this way, based on my interviews with conservatives and talks to them, that they have been completely sabotaged. It's an ambush. It's a hit job, yada, yada, yada. Where does this go, particularly around fights for the Supreme Court?
So I wish my Republican friends would understand better the unique circumstances of these sexual abuse cases. I can understand their frustration about the lateness of many of these allegations and claims, but there is something unique about this kind of claim that I would hope they would understand.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to scream at television yesterday, like, get it, totally, stipulated, timing's terrible. Listen to what she's saying. Well, I mean, listen to what she's saying.
Yeah, listen, if this was a claim about, a guy misrepresenting his income on a mortgage, and that came out 2 days before the confirmation vote, then yeah, you might have a claim. You might have a contest, but this is something unique and different.
What do you see happening this fall? We're 40 days away. You're running for re-election, as are many other people. How do the sort of politics of this moment connect to that day in November?
Yeah, I mean, the fury is real out there, and I feel...
Do people yell at you for not fighting hard enough?
Sure. Yeah. All the time. All the time. And I just think that ultimately there's a bit of a tipping point, especially amongst women, in which they watched the way in which she was treated. They watched the fundamentally different way in which not only was he treated, but he was allowed to act a way that she never, that Dr. Ford would have never gotten away with. And that fundamental unfairness, there's no way that doesn't have an impact in the polls, not unlike it did in 1992 when many women who serve today in the Senate, like Dianne Feinstein, were elected.
It's going to be a very different place come January up there. It's going to be fascinating. Yeah. It's like running a social experiment for the best. Senator Chris Murphy, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
A dramatic and really extraordinary day on Capitol Hill that really needs to be seen to be believed. How it all went down step by step next.
All In with Chris Hayes is sponsored by Advil. You'll ask, what pain? With Advil. With Advil liquid gels, you'll ask, what's bad shoulder? What headache? Advil is relief that's fast, strength that lasts. You'll ask, what pain? With Advil liquid gels.
So-so pizza? Not in this house, because that's no so-so family. That's your family, which is why you didn't grab just any cheese. You picked up new Kraft expertly paired mozzarella and Parmesan for pizza. Ah, yeah. Kraft. Family greatly.
Every day, people are fighting type 2 diabetes with food, family, and Farxiga, the pill that starts with F. Farxiga, along with diet and exercise, helps lower A1C in adults with type 2 diabetes. It's one pill a day, and although it's not a weight loss drug, it may help you lose weight.
Do not take if allergic to Farxiga. If you experience symptoms of a serious allergic reaction,
Honolulu dazzles spectators on Broadway and the silver screens of LA.
A simple belief that every fiber-lit building fuels the industry in all of us. Let's turn the promise of technology into digital progress together. Spectrum Enterprise.
Injured? It's easy to put a super lawyer on your side. Use your phone to call 1-800-HURT-NOW. Many attorneys at Kissling, Nesticone, and Reddick have been voted by our peers as Ohio's super lawyers. Call a super lawyer. 1-800-HURT-NOW.
When I hired you, I thought that you would be compliant. I'm not compliant. I will do everything I can to save this hospital.
You can't carry this load by yourself.
I will find a way.
New Amsterdam, Tuesday after This Is Us on NBC.
As we have discussed, the confirmation vote of Bret Kavanaugh has been delayed, and the FBI will be investigating the allegations. But if you were not near television this morning and early afternoon, you may have missed the dramatic events which played out to bring us to this moment. After the wrenching hearings yesterday on Capitol Hill, the country woke up this morning to the news that Senator Jeff Flake, after watching Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's harrowing account of being sexually assaulted, she says, by Bret Kavanaugh, and Kavanaugh's combative rebuttal, that Flake had decided that his critical vote would be a yes on Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court, meaning that confirmation was all but assured. Not long after that announcement, on his way to a Senate Judiciary Committee meeting to advance Kavanaugh's nomination to the full Senate, to take that vote that he had pledged that morning that had deflated so many activists, Jeff Flake was confronted in a Senate elevator by two women, two survivors, in anguish over his decision.
What you are doing is allowing someone who actually violated a woman to sit in the Supreme Court. This is not tolerable.
That's what you're telling all women in America, that they don't matter. They should just keep it to themselves, because if they have told the truth, you're just going to help that man to power anyway. That's what you're telling all of these women. That's what you're telling me right now. Look at me when I'm talking to you. You're telling me that my assault doesn't matter. That what happened to me doesn't matter.
Inside the committee room, Democrats staged a last-ditch effort to produce some of the evidence the Republican majority has blocked. Senator Richard Blumenthal making a motion to subpoena Mark Judge, the alleged accomplice in the attack on 15-year-old Christine Blasey Ford.
We cannot, in good conscience, vote without hearing at least from Mark Judge. I would submit, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, that there are other witnesses essential for us to hear from, but today I am moving that we subpoena Mark Judge.
That motion was quickly voted down, and after a contentious roll call vote to proceed on Kavanaugh's nomination later in the day at 1:30 p.m., some Democrats on the committee just got up and walked out.
It's very clear that the Republicans will break every norm, every rule to get this person on the Supreme Court. This has got to stop. So I walked out.
You know, one of our colleagues talked about this being a sham. This is a sham, what's going on in there right now.
The remaining senators forged on with committee business, speechifying back and forth about the confirmation process. And then, as the 1:30 p.m. vote deadline approached, something strange started to happen. Flake got up from his seat and left the committee room, bringing two Democrats with him, Chris Coons and Amy Klobuchar, entering a side room off the chamber. You see them going in there. And Flake would proceed to stay in that chamber out of view of the cameras for over an hour. At some point, ranking member Dianne Feinstein got up to join him, and the business of the committee just ground to a halt. Senators and staffers kept going in and out of the side room where Flake was holed up, while their colleagues from either side of the aisle whispered together as 1:30, the scheduled time for the vote, came and went. C-SPAN 2 picked up Feinstein on a hot mic, talking to Chairman Chuck Grassley about Flake, something about him being able to, quote, force it. But nobody watching had any idea what that might mean, until Flake reemerged into the committee room, this time coming in with a demand.
I have been speaking with a number of people on the other side. We've had conversations ongoing for a while with regard to making sure that we do due diligence here. And I think it would be proper to delay the floor vote for up to, but not more than 1 week, in order to let the FBI continue to do an investigation limited in time and scope to the current allegations that are there. and limited in time to no more than 1 week. And I will vote to advance the bill to the floor with that understanding.
Okay, so the understanding is there's